Welcome back to the Story of Liberty with Kirk Cameron, Dr. Marshall Foster, and Dwayne Barnhart. I'm John Bona, your host this evening. Marshall, you were talking about when we left that, why are there so many, countries around the world, as we're seeing they're imploding right now? Why are they so patient under tyranny, and why do they submit to be treated like a herd of cattle in some places? And as you explain, I think the only logical answer is they don't know the truth. They don't have the truth and knowledge of the Bible, and they're kept in darkness. But the solution is if you give them the truth and the knowledge, you elevate them and show them that they're men created in the image of God, and they'll act like men. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of places. You mentioned England. I think they've lost the original concept of proper civil government, for example, and to defend liberty. It would be impossible for them to, in my opinion, to submit to a government that oppresses them if they had that knowledge. And I think also, on the other hand, we learn from the conduct of these, different tyrants around the world that the light, the Bible, is really hostile to them. So they labor to keep men in darkness. And as you know, just like I understand Chavez in Venezuela, he, in the open, he will make it seem like he's supporting Christianity in public. But the reality is, what I've been told and read, behind the scenes, he's working really hard to tear it down and destroy Christianity. And, of course, Kirk, this gets back to why our founding fathers built the Forefathers Monument in Plymouth, Mass. So we wouldn't forget the basic truths and knowledge that our Pilgrim Fathers had, right?
Yeah, that was one of the most striking aspects of my journey in retracing the footsteps of the Forefathers, is that they had left such a monumental impression on the hearts and minds of the American people that over 100 years ago, the people erected the nation's largest granite monument in the country, and it was to immortalize the Pilgrims' view and strategy for building a free and just nation. And it's just amazing. I'd never heard of it before. It's called the Monument to the Forefathers, and it's sort of hidden, it seems, on a hilltop, tucked behind a forest of trees and surrounded by a residential neighborhood. It's not really being kept up, and many people have never seen it and never even heard of it, even people living in Massachusetts. And I think it's the most important monument that we've got in our country. The name of this monument, as I said, is Monument to the Forefathers, and it's a statue of Faith. And she's standing there, 81 feet tall, with her arm raised and her finger pointing toward heaven. She has an open Geneva Bible in her left hand and a star on her forehead. And to the pilgrims, the star represented wisdom, and her foot was placed on Plymouth Rock. And so there she is, standing on Plymouth Rock with a Bible in her hand, pointing toward heaven, reasoning from the Scriptures as she lays out a strategy for the nation. And under her are four smaller statues: morality, law, education, and liberty, or freedom. And it's just mind-blowing to me to see how smart and how wise these pilgrims were in their understanding of how to build a nation. And that's the strategy that we've gotten away from. Marshall, I love how you sort of explain that statue, starting with the final statuette, Liberty Man. Why don't you go ahead and explain that, how that works?
Exactly. As you walk up to the statue or the monument, the first thing that you really notice, besides the size and the beauty of Faith and how she's the foundation of everything, you can see that. By the way, this was the president was here in 1890 when it was put up, and and thousands of people came, and it was funded by the nation, was funded by the Massachusetts state legislature and children from all over America. And even as soon as 120 years ago, when this was built, it was a monument that was given by all Americans to say to the Americans of the 20th and 21st century, don't forget. What should we not forget? Well, we should not forget that strategy that is laid out. This is not just a Statue of Liberty, which is very important, but the Statue of Liberty was actually modeled after this statue, which this had been in its development stage for 50 years. And we believe that the man from France who then brought over the Statue of Liberty was actually using that as his model because they're so much alike. But the thing that's different about the Forefathers Monument than the Statue of Liberty is the Statue of Liberty is the expression of freedom that has already been manifest, whereas the Forefathers Monument tells us how to get that freedom and how to maintain it. And so right there in that statue, you see this strategy so well developed, and as you walk up to it, you see this freedom man. He is Liberty Man. Now, what is this guy like? He's seated. He's in a Roman toga. He's got his hand on his sword, but it's at rest. He's looking out vigilantly to see that he can maintain his liberty and to protect and provide for his family. And at the same time, you see on the side of the monument these various smaller images where it says that he actually has defeated tyranny. And he's got a sword at the throat of tyranny. He's got his foot down on his chest. And he's defeated tyranny. For the first time in human history, after 5,000 years, tyranny was defeated in America. I mean, let that sink in for a minute, if you're in the radio audience, that we're talking about a liberty that had not been experienced by the people in all the history of the world, and Liberty Man had experienced it, the man in America. And he had not done it because he had fought his way there by killing everybody else, but he did it by following the strategy of that monument. You don't become a Liberty Man by becoming Genghis Khan or Adolf Hitler or Stalin and taking a world for yourself. You become a Liberty Man by being governed in your heart by a new power and a force that enables you to do the right thing, not just do anything. And so freedom, liberty, as understood by our founding fathers, was not the freedom to do what you want, it was the liberty to do what you ought. And that is the kind of hero that I believe most Americans are looking for today. We're tired of the anti-heroes. We're tired of the Sly Stallones and the old Clint Eastwoods that ride into town with a cigarette on their in their mouth and roll a babe on the back of their horse and ride out of town. So they're anti-heroes. They seem like they do good, but in reality, in their own lives, they're a mess. We want to see real heroes who are willing to die for something greater than themselves, to die for truth, to die for their God, to die for liberty and justice for others, not just for themselves. That's what Liberty Man is like. And that's what people really want in their hearts. They want to be like that guy. And the strategy is, how do you get there? And that's the beauty of the monument, because it explains now, how do you get it?
Well, that's great. Thank you, Marshall. Any questions or comments, you could email storyofliberty@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments. Dwayne Barnhart, I remember, when you and I were standing there, producer Dwayne Barnhart of Monumental is on with us as well, with Kirk Cameron and Dr. Foster. Dwayne, I remember one evening you and I were standing there waiting for Kirk to come in. He had just flown in, and we were filming a scene there, and you and I were standing around looking at those key symbols on the Statue of Faith that a man by the name of Hammond Billings designed, and basically to interpret, the pilgrim belief. In other words, that these four characteristics Marshall was talking about kind of defined a forefather in general, and a pilgrim in general, what they believed. Dwayne, I remember you saying to me, we were looking at the open Bible, standing there, that faith, the Statue of Faith is holding, and it's depicted as open, like the pages are being blown open by the wind, and how you and I were taken by that. That was a very moving moment for me, just being there and seeing this huge statue named Faith holding the Bible. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with everybody. I mean, the monument really just blew me away myself. You know, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is I thought I knew something about American history, at least to some degree. Turns out there's huge gaps in my understanding of American history. But the good news is what I've learned about America's founding has only shored up my convictions about who we are and where we came from, and more importantly, given us a direction of where we can go from here collectively as a country. And
right.
That's exciting. You talk about the Geneva Bible and the wind of the Spirit blowing it open, interpretively speaking. I look back at the idea of where this film really began, and it really shows the providential hand of God throughout the whole idea and its inception to begin with. And part of that was, meeting Marshall back in, I think it was around 1998, was it, Marshall?
1999, yep.
99. And, not knowing, a handful of years later, we would be back together again and meeting with Kirk at a restaurant in Thousand Oaks, talking about the potential of making, I think we were first just talking about doing a video, and then we realized the story was much too big for us to tell in 30 minutes or even an hour, and out came this idea for this documentary film. And, of course, somewhere in between that time, you, John, and Marshall had met, and here's God bringing us all together for such a time as this.
Right. Kirk, how did you actually meet Dr. Foster?
Well, let's see. Dwayne and I have been friends for quite a while, and Dwayne gave me a book that Dr. Foster had written called Battle for the 21st Century, and I was really impressed with the book. It really kind of convicted me about a few things, and when I found out that Dr. Foster was living in the Thousand Oaks area, we got together and had lunch together. Actually, Marshall, wait a minute. Didn't we just coincidentally bump into each other in an airport, actually, before that?
At LAX. We both
That's
had
right.
a plane bump, and we sat there for 2 hours and talked at the airport.
That's right. I don't know what got us talking, but I think I when I had heard the name, I'm Dr. Marshall Foster, I thought, oh no, you're the guy that wrote that manual that's kept me up at night, and so we started talking, and Marshall started schooling me on American history, and boy, it was just fascinating. For the first time in my life, I was really fired up about history and history of America, because it was so different from what I had learned. My impression of the Pilgrims was that they were these funny little people who came over in these black and white suits with these tall hats and belt buckles on their shoes, with the funny looking guns, and they didn't know how to plant corn or didn't know what to do with fish, and they needed Squanto to help them out. Always heard about how the white man had come and stolen all the Indians' land, and how these were peace-loving environmentalists, and really America was founded sort of illegitimately right from the get-go. Well, Marshall really kind of blew the cover off of all of that and helped me to understand the real history of our country and how it's rooted in the Scriptures and in the Great Commission to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. So that's how we got started, and once that train left the building, it just didn't stop.
Well, that's great. Oh, we'll be back in a minute with Kirk Cameron, Dr. Foster, and Dwayne Barnhart, the producer of Monumental.